And earlier today, they mutually agreed to part ways with their general manager, Chris Grier, who has been with the organization since 2000. He served as their GM since 2016. Dolphins senior personnel executive Champ Kelly is going to be the interim GM. It's a critical part of the year with the trade deadline coming up this Tuesday. As for what it means for Miami head coach Mike McDaniel, our Adam Schefter reporting that McDaniel will remain Miami's head coach for at least the remainder of the regular season, per sources. As we wish you all a happy Halloween, and our friend RC dressed as the great Willy Wonka. I love it. And he once said, the suspense is terrible. I hope it lasts. That's a Willy Wonka phrase.
Yes, ma'am.
Suspense is over in Miami. What do you think about the moves they made today?
They definitely aren't using pure imagination in Miami right now. You know, this is a struggling organization, an organization that's had players come into its spotlight and play well in Miami, and seen them cast off by Chris Grier. And they've acquired new faces around there that haven't actually panned out to be successful on the field. And now when you look at this team and its lackluster performances, the lackluster effort and execution, there had to be a change. The only reason I could see right now for keeping Mike McDaniel from Stephen Ross is to not put this entire organization in upheaval as you try to assess the players and the staff within this building. The thing for me is this: can you continue to get them to play hard? Can you continue to get each an individual and independent contractor to put their best foot forward? Because sometimes the name on the back has to matter more than the logo on the helmet. Mike McDaniel, to me, is a great X and O coach. He's a great strategist, and schematically, he's one of the smartest coaches in football. Can he get these guys to continue to play throughout the rest of the season?
They really beat themselves last night, right? At times, they look like they have potential, but they just, man, they got in their own way last night. Mina and Dan are both with us on this Halloween Friday. So, Mina, let's start with you. What did you think when you heard the news?
Yeah, you never want to cheer or root for someone losing their job or parting ways, but this makes a ton of sense. It was a long time coming. Grier took a lot of big swings on the current roster. Obviously, they haven't worked out, the biggest being contract they gave to the quarterback. Get to that in a second. Draft classes have been very mixed. Feels like they haven't been able to fix their offensive line for, honestly, you guys know NFL Live. How long have I been talking about it? 6 years plus? So it definitely makes sense that it was his time to go. It's going to be a tough situation for whoever, by the way, takes this job. Tua's contract is still very large. To move on from it after this year would be exceedingly difficult. After next year, the dead cap hit gets more manageable. So, you know, you'd be walking into a situation, not a ton of young talent on this roster. But we have seen similarly difficult situations, Denver being, of course, the most obvious, turn around really quickly with the right players and quarterbacks. So it makes sense. We'll see what happens with Mike McDaniel. I echo RC's points about him as a play caller.
Yeah, before I get to Chris Grier, I want to touch on kind of Mike and Tua to Mina and RC's point. So I think 2 years ago, right around this time, this team was the #1 seed in the AFC. They were playing at home on Monday Night Football against the Titans. They win that game, they would have locked up the division. Ever since then, it's gone downhill. They lost that football game. But I don't believe that Mike McDaniel has forgotten how to coach, and Tua was in the MVP running at that point. I don't think Tua has forgotten how to play football at a high level. I think the reason that Chris Grier kind of had what happened today happen, this roster just is devoid of talent. I called their Monday Night Football game about a month ago. They don't have a ton of talent on this football team that you sit there and go, wow. In the last 10 drafts for Chris Grier, he has not drafted a single first-team All-Pro offensive player. If you compare that to a lot of the other AFC rosters, it's just not good enough. I don't think that this team is going to win a ton of games, but I do think that Mike McDaniel is a completely competent head coach, and Tua is still very much so a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, next up for the Dolphins after the mini-bye, doesn't get much easier. It's the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the Ravens won that game. We're going to talk about them later, but we have more news to get to. A developing story in Jacksonville as the Jaguars placed two-way rookie Travis Hunter on the injured reserve list this morning after he suffered a knee injury in practice yesterday. This means he is going to miss a minimum of 4 games. We just absolutely hate to see this, Dan. What does it mean for the Jags?
Well, hopefully it's the short term. And hopefully it's just that 4-week stint. One, this is devastating for the Jaguars because they gave a lot up to get Travis Hunter. And I wouldn't say that he's had the impact both on either side of the ball that I think a lot of people anticipated and hoped for. So you're sitting there going, gave up a lot of draft capital for him. And right now he's been good at times and really good, but maybe not as impactful. I think the second thing was he's coming off his best game as a wide receiver.
Yep.
And you were sitting there after that Rams game going, all right, now you can come off of the bye and take off because this offense needs him. This is an offense that still desperately struggles to consistently catch the football. I would argue he's got the most consistent hands on the offensive unit. And Brian Thomas Jr. has been up and down this year. They need him opposite Brian Thomas Jr. to balance this pass game. And so hopefully it's a short period of time, but the reality is this is a devastating break for a Jaguars football team and a young player that just seemed, at least offensively, to start to take off.
This is a spot where you have to recalibrate. And I love that Dan mentioned what they gave up to draft him, because you gave that up because you had a plan for him. You thought that he could impact the football game on both sides of the field. And it was starting to trend toward he was going to be more of a 1B receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. In that last game against the Rams, he had 14 targets, 8 catches, 101 yards, a big catch for 34 yards, and a touchdown. It seemed that he was moving into being an offensive specialist for them. And so now when he comes off of this injury, whenever it is, if he does play again this season, it's about having a plan that allows him to be impactful, that's not stuck to the plan you had when you drafted him. You're going to have to move forward with how does Travis Hunter not only best help this team, but how do we keep him healthy and allow him to progress as his athleticism will take him, because he's one of the more talented players in this league. He has to learn to be a specialist and master an art somewhere on this field.
Yeah, that's why this was so devastating, right? Because to both of your points, it felt like there was some improvement there as a wide receiver, expansion of the route tree as the year was going along. And I was watching him thinking, this is going to look so much better in December than it did in September, but now we won't get to see that. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously you need the secondary pass catchers to step up. I would argue, though, equally important, they got to get back to running the football the way they did the first few weeks of the season. Something I thought Liam Cohen did an excellent job of at Tampa Bay was making adjustments in the run game to the personnel he had. This offensive line is not as good as the one he had in Tampa, but he has to find answers. One of those answers, and this is, I think, a little bit of potentially good news for Jacksonville, Brenton Strange, their tight end, will be back, I believe, eligible week 11. The more I think about it, and the more I think about what I saw from him the first month of the season, he is really important in this offense, both as a pass catcher, but also equally important as a blocker. He was such a big part of what they were doing on the ground. So I think his return will help them be a more balanced offense, and I think they can build off of that going forward.
RC, to your recalibrate point, I wonder if this makes Jacksonville recalibrate their thoughts of his usage. He came into this season thinking he could play both ways, and that was their plan. And I know he was nicked up a little bit in like week 2, week 3, and now this happens, and it might be an independent type of event. But I wonder if they sit back, him coming off of this injury, and say, you know what, maybe we gave him too much too soon, and he is just a offensive or a defensive player, and he's not both.
Yeah, and I think that is with an understanding that you have to accept you may have been wrong, right? The lure of Travis Hunter was that he could play both ways, that we watched him play 100-plus snaps throughout his college career in every game. But this is the NFL. It's different. It's difficult to learn. And physically, that will take its toll on you. We don't know how this injury happened, but this does tell us that you have to manage how much you give this young man and how much you ask from him, because he's only human.
And he really wanted to play both ways.
That's the other part.
He made that clear. It's going to be a very difficult discussion if it does come to that coming up. All right, we are just getting started here on